Hi there, my name is Raya from Active Health Clinic, and today I wanted to speak to you about the different types of rest. Now, as you're aware, and you may have seen a separate video, we have 7 different types of fatigue and varying degrees of symptoms. So we have different types of fatigue, we have different severities of symptoms that sometimes indicate slow down, sometimes indicate stop, or actually sometimes indicate that we're okay to go. So if we have different types of fatigue, and we have different types of symptom severity, then that indicates that we have different types of rest. Now, different types of rest isn't a new thing that we've just found out about, but it's also a very important conversation to have about figuring out our best versions of rest. Okay, so one of the first things is in these conditions, rest doesn't necessarily feel overly restorative, and rest doesn't always get rid of our symptoms. But that's not to say that it's not productive, and that's not to say that we don't need it. So first thing is we need to make sure that we're resting or recharging in the ways that we need to. So one of the first things we want to identify is the trigger. The types of triggers or the reasons behind our symptom onset can tell us about the type of rest that we may need. Okay. Sometimes we'll need a bit more of a deeper rest, which is, doing very, very little. And other times we might need a little bit of a more specific type of rest based on the activity that we were doing. So there's kind of 5 major categories behind the types of rest when navigating a chronic illness. Now, the first one is physical rest, and that is a very straightforward one. That is when we are resting our body physically. The second one is cognitive rest. So this sort of refers back to mental or cognitive load, and therefore something being mentally or cognitively gentle. So this might be something like mindfulness. This also might be something like mindlessness or not an actual focused attention. So sometimes that might be going to a TV show that you've seen before because it feels like a bit more of a cognitive break. Then the third one is emotional rest. Now, this refers to time away from emotions or emotional stimulus. So sometimes that might be connection with others, or sometimes that might be connection with self and activity or time away from others, for instance. Then we have social rest, which refers to potentially being away from people and stimulus. And then we also have sensory rest, which is similar to social rest. However, this is different from person to person in terms of what type of sensory recharge they may need. Okay, so there are 5 overarching types of rest within navigating a chronic illness. So if we identify that there are different types of rest, within that, there are maybe different activities that we can do within those types of rest. So sometimes that means we need a physical rest, cognitive rest, emotional, social, sensory. Other times we might be able to have a bit more of a spiritual rest or a creative rest. So this means that sometimes we might have different capacity to do different things based on knowing our body a little bit better and being able to notice the fluctuations within our symptoms and know how we best need to pace. Okay, because one of the biggest things that we need to look at is pacing doesn't just mean we're recharging our symptoms. Pacing and recharge means that we need to recharge as a person as well, which means this is where hobbies and interest points are super important, because they are the things that can be a part of our day or even our week or even our month that helps us navigate living life with a chronic illness, that helps separate the pacing that we have to do because of symptom severity or symptom volume. So I hope that all makes sense. And why I made this video is to encourage you to have a look at the types of fatigue that you experience, the traffic lights that you experience, and then identifying in what ways you are currently resting and in what ways you may have more wiggle room for the best kind of rest for you. So I think some people are really good at recognizing physical rest, for instance, or need for physical rest, but sometimes we don't necessarily know or notice the need for cognitive or emotional rest, or the separation between those two as well. Other times we may know that we need a bit more of a social rest, but we might actually need a bit more of a sensory rest or a type of sensory rest. So I hope this video helps in helping you identify your types of rest, but also more importantly, also helping you identify the types of activities that can be well paced within your day without overload and to minimize that booming and busting that occurs. So I hope you found this video helpful. If so, feel free to comment below or share this with a loved one that may need to hear this as well, because it is so important to find our best types of rest.